Want to take your poker game to the next level? Then you need to stop making these 5 mistakes. If you play 1-2, 1-3 or 2-5 live, I can almost guarantee that you make at least some of them. In fact, every single one of my students has at least some of these leaks, and they are extremely costly. So today I'm going to show you what these 5 leaks are, how you can stop them, and what you should do instead in order to make 2025 the best year of your poker career. Let's jump right into them. The first big leak is a classic that I see all the time, like in this example. Hero opens Jack 10 of spades in late position and gets called by the button. The flop is Ace Jack 4 rainbow. Hero now makes a small c-bet. This is not terrible, although I'd prefer to see a check. Our hand might be good, but we don't really want to invest a lot of money with it. But anyway, we bet and get called. The turn is the 7 of diamonds and brings a flush draw. Hero now bets almost pot, and this is a big mistake. Betting big on the turn is indeed a thing, but the reason why we do that is because we want to polarize on the turn. That means that we want to bet our very best hands and our bluffs. And now tell me which of these two things our hand is. Is Jack 10 one of the best hands we could possibly have in this spot? Certainly not. Is it a complete bluff where we hope to get villain to fold some marginal hand? No, because we have some showdown value with our second pair, but it seems unlikely that villain would fold a better hand. It's not impossible that we do get a better hand to fold, but there is no point in risking a pot-sized bet when we have okay showdown value. Whenever you get to the turn as the aggressor, think whether your hand actually accomplishes something when it bets big. So the first thing to stop doing if you want to crush live poker now is stop making polarization mistakes. The second one is also a big favorite of mine, and I've talked about it quite a bit in the last few months. But I'm including it here again because it is such an important thing, and so many players will get it wrong. A student of mine recently complained that he has so many bad beats. I analyzed his game and found out that it was exactly this one leak that led to most of those lost pots that he called bad beats. Here's a typical example of this mistake. There's an early position raise, 2 more players call, Hero has Ace 10 offsuit in the cutoff and calls. Both blinds also call, and we go 6 ways to the flop. The flop is Ace 8 deuce. The original raiser c-bets, 1 player calls, 1 player folds. Hero now calls as well, both blinds get out of the way. The turn is an offsuit queen. The original raiser bets again, the other player calls again, Hero calls behind. The river is a 10, we now have 2 pair. The early position player shoves for his remaining chips. The other player folds. Hero has 2 pair and flicks in the call because we didn't drive to the casino to call Ace 10 offsuit preflop and then fold 2 pair on the river. Villain turns over Ace Queen for better 2 pairs. So what went wrong here? If you're trying to find the answer post-flop or would like to blame bad luck for making us river a worse second pair, then you're on the wrong path. Because the mistake here was clearly pre-flop. Ace 10 offsuit in late position is a really good hand if nobody has put any money into the pot voluntarily. But after an early position raise and 2 calls, this hand is terrible. It has reverse implied odds in case we hit an ace because someone else can have a better ace, as it happened in this example, and it just plays terribly multi-way anyway. You can consider a 3-bet squeezing with this hand, or you can fold, but calling is terrible. Even in heads-up pots, it is never a great idea to call a hand like Ace 10 offsuit, especially not if the raise size was bigger than 2 times the big blind, which is basically always in live poker. And in multi-way pots, this becomes a sin that destroys bankrolls. So the second thing to stop doing if you want to crush live poker is stop calling bets pre-flop. Play a 3-bet or fold strategy only. The next mistake won't seem costly because you usually only lose a small amount of money, but it adds up to a bankroll eater. Say you have ace-king offsuit in early position and raise to $10 in a 1-2. This raise size is too big, but this is not even the mistake I'm talking about. 4 players call, including the big blind. Now we are 5 ways to a flop of 10-7-5 with 2 spades. Big blind checks and we fire a c-bet of $25 into this pot. Now think for a moment. What does this bet accomplish? Can we get a worse hand to call? Well, maybe some sort of a draw calls, but that would have decent equity against our hand and we are out of position. Is it likely that we can get everyone to fold? I would say absolutely not. It would be a poker miracle if we could get this one through against 4 opponents whose ranges connect very well with this flop. Sure, a low pocket pair might fold, but what about the other players? At least one of them will continue. And then what will we do on the turn? Continue barreling with ace high out of position? Maybe you don't make this exact mistake because you realize that it is silly. But I chose an extreme example on purpose. But the fact is that even in a heads-up pot, such a flop would have to be treated very carefully. And there are loads of players out there who just c-bet every flop against multiple players just because they are the pre-flop aggressor. Don't be that guy. I have just published my new ebook c-bet Mastery. If you want a free copy, just click the link in the description below. After you read that book, you will stop making this third mistake, which is c-betting every hand. The next one is a really old school play, but many players still do this. It is linked to our first mistake, the polarization error, but with a twist. Here is a common spot where this happens. A player in middle position raises to $10 and our hero calls in the big blind with 9-8 suited. The flop comes Jack 8-3 rainbow. Normal procedure would be to check to the aggressor, but old school players will often donk bet small in this spot. A donk bet is any bet made by a player out of position who was not the aggressor on the previous street. The thinking goes,
I want to find out if my weak pair is good. If villain has an overpair, he will raise me. And if he has ace-king, then I won't get outdrawn if he folds.
This thinking makes kind of sense until you play against a good opponent. He will see right through this play and can apply pressure. But we'll get to that later. First, I'd like to talk about what poker is about. You might say,
Poker is about winning money.
That's not wrong, but at its core, poker is a game where you have to try to avoid mistakes while inducing your opponent to make mistakes. And by donk betting in this exact spot, you allow your opponent to play perfectly. If he has an overpair, you're putting money in for him. If he has nothing, you don't allow him to bluff. Or you allow him to bluff, but then he will raise and you will probably have to fold. And if he has a hand like ace-king, you still give him the odds to catch a pair with his 2 overcards. So there is hardly a way to get him to make a mistake by betting. Here's what to do instead. Check for information. If you check in this spot, you give him the chance to bluff any overcards or other junk that he has. And that is an easy way to let him make a mistake. So the fourth thing to stop doing if you want to crush live poker now is stop betting for information. Instead, check for information. And now to the last one. This is a mindset issue that creeps into so many situations that it paralyzes players, like in this example. We reach the river with a set against a really passive opponent. The flush just completed on the river. We bet the flop and the turn, and he called twice. Now he checks to us. This is a spot where you would have to be very careful against good, strong, tricky opponents. If you bet, they might check raise you both for value and as a bluff. And then you would be in a world of pain. But in our example, we're up against a passive calling station. This type of player will not bluff raise you. But I see so many players just check behind in this spot because they are terrified of getting raised. They are afraid of a scenario that is extremely unlikely to happen. This league can be seen in many different spots. For example, not betting an overpair on the turn because of fear of getting check raised, or not raising Jack 9 suited on the button because the big blind is aggressive and might 3-bet. All these things could indeed happen, but the likelihood of them happening is often much smaller than we think. So the fifth thing to stop doing if you want to crush live poker is stop being worried about things that might never happen. You'll have enough time to worry about them in the unlikely event that you will get raised. Now you know what not to do, but if you want to know my simple strategy to win at live low stakes, then click on the video here.